Chapter 9. Once again the Veltimes were on their way. The elves were whistling some old mountain song behind them. One managed to get his banjo out from the back of their old cart, and another joined in on harmonica as the rest sang at the tops of their voices. Most elves had their own ponies to ride, but some were travelling on a rickety cart pulled by ponies. Steering was pretty hit and miss with this method, and involved some falling off onto the snow on certain corners with much cursing and muttering. Finally, the Edelweiss Inn was in sight. The elves melted into the background. Bruno pulled the horses around the back of the inn and spoke quietly to his faithful collie-cross dog. Aufstepf obeyed his master and made for his kennel as asked. Bruno got the dog some beef jerky and a fresh bowl of water. He had been so quiet on arrival that Saul was unaware of the Veltimes' presence. Bruno threw a small piece of wood chip from the stable block at Saul's window. Finally, after 3 attempts, Saul opened his window in the bright moonlit night. "Shh!" whispered Bruno. "Come down now, Saul. We need your help urgently. We only have 10 minutes. Saul threw on a dressing gown, boots and a hat and was down the stairs in no time. Bruno had to explain the situation to Saul. Rather than admit to the elves' presence, he decided to say that he'd been blackmailed and the blackmailers were waiting up the road, all armed to the teeth. Of course, the blackmailers were, in reality, the elves. Saul told Bruno that the injured man was very poorly and had asked to be put in touch with certain other men, but that the visiting doctor and the local magistrate did not like the choice of men with whom he had company. The injured man was called Rowell, and he had tried to get notes sneaked out of the inn, and it would only be a matter of time before his accomplices turned up to collect him. The satchel was at first put in the safe of the inn, but Rowell did not trust the safe once the magistrate had started poking about, asking questions about why Rowell was on the mountain and how he had come about such a serious injury. Fearing having his satchel confiscated, he asked for it to be brought up to his room and now slept with it locked away in a cupboard in his room with the keys kept on him at all times. The only way around it would be to sneak the keys out of his zipped belt pocket as he slept. Rowell slept with the belt on him at all times. With no time to spare, Saul rushed away to Rowell's room. The injured man had indeed broken his ankle. Rowell was given extra pillows to elevate his injured leg. He was heavy on room service demands, but luckily for Saul, he was a heavy drinker with a deep sleep. The first task Saul had to do was to pry open a window on the corridor from which Rowell's room was located. Saul crept up to Rowell's room with a lit candle and had to use a skeleton key with which he had been entrusted in order to open the bedroom door. This was extremely risky since he had no business being there at that time. And the man could well be in his rights to challenge the hotel. This was very risky since he had no business being there at that time, and the man could well be in his rights to challenge the hotel servant unless he could come up with a viable reason, and fast. Saul turned the key in the door lock and gently turned the handle. The door was incredibly creaky and also very stiff, since snow and damp had caused the timbers to warp. Opening the door seemed to take an age. Finally, Saul was in the room and could then slowly close the door behind him, but he decided against letting the latch click behind him, instead wedging a small piece of wood he had bought in his pocket under the door, so that it remained just a little bit ajar. Saul approached the sleeping man. Bending over him, Saul slowly unzipped the belt on the man's waist to retrieve the cupboard key. Rowell snored loudly, then made munching and grinding noises with his teeth. He had a big beard which blended in with his bushy moustache. Just as Saul was about to retrieve the key, the sleeping man turned heavily on his side. The keys were only just visible now. Pushing hard down on the mattress, Saul gained the extra few millimeters needed to extricate the key. Once retrieved, the keys had to be silenced since they jangled loudly. At one point, the jangling in the room caused Rowell to munch loudly, and he appeared to actually open one eye. Rowell appeared to be making strange noises as breath came out of his lips. His mouth was making what sounded like a motor pump sound between his lips, which vibrated in time with each exhale of sharp breath. At times, he seemed to have interrupted breathing, which led to a sharp inhale of breath, followed by gurgles and rasps, and even a nasty cough. Saul shielded the candle flame from Rowell's eyes. Opening the cupboard door with the keys was no easy matter. There were 4 potential keys which were of the right size and shape. At one point, Saul selected the wrong key and it nearly jammed in the cupboard lock. Finally, after what seemed like an age, he had the lock turned and was on Finally, after what seemed like an age, he had the lock turned and was into the cupboard. Inside the dark recesses of the cupboard, he found a large drawer which was also locked. Finally, Saul discovered which of his keys fitted the cupboard. He was now only inches away from the precious satchel. Taking a last look around him at the slumbering giant of Raoul, he squeezed the satchel out of the drawer. It was so heavy that it took all of Saul's strength to even lift it up. He could not believe how heavy such a compact but bulging full satchel could be. Suddenly, without warning, a sharp snap could be heard in the dark. Saul looked down to see the jagged edges of a small animal trap as it closed on itself. The small trap vibration set off some mouse and rat traps set up close by them. The injured Raoul had managed to set up improvised booby traps. That explained why he had been complaining to the chambermaid about mice in his room and got them to give him a small animal trap by claiming that his room had a rat in it. The chambermaids already hated him for pestering them. Raoul was only supposed to stay for 2 more nights, they were told. He was to be well kept, despite some staff not knowing why he was brought in. Saul's intrusion had set off a snapping sound that was so loud that it woke Raoul. Bolt upright. Saul had no time to spare. He blew out his candle and gripped the satchel tightly. Ducking sharply, he avoided the first bullet that Raoul instinctively fired from his Derringer pistol, which had obviously been kept loaded and ready under his pillow. Saul dived for the door, opening it from a lying down position with his fingers fully outstretched. He prized the wedge away and rolled to one side of the door as a giant Raoul screamed with rage. "I'll kill you, whoever you are. I'll cut you down with lead. Drop my satchel if you're... I'll kill you, whoever you are. I'll cut you down with lead. Drop my satchel or you're dead." A bullet cut through the door of the room. Grabbing his last chance to escape, Saul kicked the satchel out of the door with a bullet finding the side of the case. He picked his moment and rolled out of the door to one side. Once in the corridor, he ran with a heavy satchel and made off down the corridor at top speed. Without even looking out of the window, he flung the satchel out through the open sash. It fell heavily, but luckily intact on the stable roof from where it slid down, landing not 6 feet from Bruno's feet. Bruno grabbed it quickly, realizing that the angry Raoul was now on the rampage. Putting Saul in such mortal danger was not the intention of the satchel snatch. Putting Saul in such mortal danger was not the intention of the satchel snatch, but now it was imperative that Saul was seen as a man disturbed by the satchel robbery. With great aplomb of character, Saul put on his best serving jacket and grabbed a fire poker and ran up the stairs towards the angry gun-brandishing man. This was a dangerous ploy, but in the circumstances it was all that Saul could do to try and avoid being called a satchel thief. Saul saw Raoul. Raoul was standing in great pain at the door to his room. His dressings were clearly visible, but the giant of a man was screaming in pain with having to bear the weight of the broken bones so soon without a crutch. "What in heaven's name is going on?" Saul shouted up to the gun-brandishing Raoul. "Some dirty, filthy elf has taken my satchel. I shot at him, but he's obviously one of the little people since I was too high in aim. I reckon the elf jumped out of that window. Now he's long gone into the forest in my bag. Can anyone get me a horse? I want to follow them." "Not in your condition, Mr. Brown. We do not have horses stabled for such an event. I suggest that we get you back to bed and I'll deal with all the other guests who've been disturbed by your gun going off. We'll have to contact the local magistrate about this incident. It's highly irregular to fire off a gun in a hotel room. I'll ask the hotel owners for advice on the matter." "I knew I couldn't trust you people. I damn well knew this would be trouble," shouted Raoul angrily. "Herr Braun, lest you forget you were found close to death by a kindly passer-by who had no obligation to stop. Considering how risky it is to stop in certain places on these mountains, your rescue on Avalanche Ridge was nothing short of a miracle which saved your life. Perhaps that's all that matters, and anything pertaining to your satchel will have to be dealt with. Perhaps that's all that matters, and anything pertaining to your satchel will have to wait until daylight. We have other hysterical guests now. It's imperative that we all get back to sleep. I'm supposed to be serving breakfast in under 3 hours, so, if you don't mind, I'll have your gun, please, for safekeeping. I'll speak to the hotel owners about this. We have some guests who have already made complaints about us taking in an injured person. By saying that the Edelweiss Inn isn't an infirmary. Why didn't we contact the monastery which caters for all sorts? Why didn't we contact the monastery which caters for all those in peril rescued on the mountains? I'm afraid that we may have to send you to the monastery in the morning to avoid further trouble for us now that you've discharged a gun. The monks have secure cells and are quite capable of caring for you until you heal, but they would expect you to recompense them if you're able. No doubt you have legitimate business here. The monks may also contact magistrates to confirm any leads about your satchel going missing. Saul's act had worked brilliantly. He had placated the angry injured man and placed himself in an authoritative position by juxtaposing the rule of law together with his professional role in the hotel to place himself above reproach from the injured thief. Why he had to explain himself to the man in such a situation was beyond him, but then he was just grateful that none of the bullets fired by Raoul had found their mark in him. A quick glance around showed the damage the bullets had done to the area. Neat holes were in the hotel room door, and one bullet had splintered the window frames that tracked along the wood. There was blood on the rug close to the door, but that belonged to Raoul, as his wound was oozing blood. Raoul was bent double with pain as Saul eased him back into bed. Saul fetched new dressings and did his best to clean the area around the wound. You really need to get some rest, Herr Braun. These sudden movements are not going to help you heal at all. Get some sleep. I'll get you some pain relief now and some nice hot drinks. Plus I'll see about getting your room tidied and arrange for clean bedding and a commode change. It could be a while because I've got to deal with management and the disturbed guests right now. We now have an angry pair of chambermaids who are just about trying to get everyone back to bed immediately. I'll find out who took my satchel, and when I do, it will be to assist with pot washing and general kitchen service, but was not a trained chef. He was, however, expected to assist with service at the bar if things got very busy in the evenings once his other duties were complete. He was also expected to help with lifting heavy luggage and the arrival and departure chores as designated to him. By pure guile and not a little luck on the part of Saul's intervention, it seemed that Bruno was now the sole holder of the heavy satchel with its mysterious contents. By pure guile and not a little luck on the part of Saul's intervention, it seemed that Bruno was now the sole holder of the heavy satchel with its mysterious contents. Once free of the Edelweiss Inn, Bruno and Monica were aware that the elves were following them close behind. Despite the threat of being attacked by the elves, the Veltimes had to aim to get home as soon as possible. Bruno wanted rid of the satchel at the earliest moment, but he most certainly did not want to be caught with the satchel so close to the point at which it had been taken. Without explaining this to the elves, he felt sure that they would understand that he couldn't stop so soon in his predicament. In this inference he was partly correct. After half an hour of heavy going, Bruno heard the sound of hoofs behind him and a shout of, "Whoa, those horses! Just bring those ponies to a stop as soon as you can, if you don't mind," said a calm but very determined voice. Bruno tugged on the reins and gave the command to the ponies to stop. Well, well, if it isn't my good friends the elves," he said with mock surprise. "How may I help you, if you don't mind me asking?" he cheekily inquired. "You know what we want, Herr Veltheim. No funny business, no silly games. You really do not want to get into trouble beyond the trouble any Alpine farmer has at the moment, do you?" Without ceremony, Bruno and Monica were ordered out of their sled. Two elves ran towards the sled. One elf was assigned to minding the ponies, but since he couldn't reach up to them, he made do with patting them gently and offering them a mint from a bag he'd slung over his shoulder. "One satchel is bulging with our rocks, boss. There's some other stuff in it, but I can't tell what it is," said one of the elves sent to fetch the satchel. "Just check the satchel's closed and that it's very heavy, but don't open it just yet. I need to check the contents before we let the Veltimes go." "We don't have much time, so hurry up and bring me the satchel now," the senior elf shouted to his assistants, and so, unceremoniously, the satchel changed hands yet again. It was so heavy that it needed two elves to support the weight. They both held an end of it because it looked like the handle would break at one point. "How the hell did that nasty man run off with this in his hand?" said one of the elves as beads of sweat appeared on his face due to the exertion of shifting the satchel. "I think I know what's inside," said his companion. "I only hope that we can get the contents back before our great leader finds out that someone has been poking around our kingdom again." With not so much as a thank you, the elves then melted back into the woods. As the elves ran away, Monica saw a small package drop from one of the elves' back pockets. It landed silently in the snow. Bruno walked over to the object. He could see that it was a little velvet pouch. My, how does this keep happening to us?" he sighed. "Just leave it, Father. It could only bring us trouble, you know. Don't you think?" But it was, of course, too late. Bruno was already reaching for the velvet pouch. It was certain that one of the elves had dropped it. It was also pretty certain that they'd be back to retrieve it at some stage. The only sensible option, according to Monica, was to leave it lying there. Bruno hesitated just before picking the pouch up as his brain processed the information relating to what might become of him if he meddled with elves' property, even if innocently. If I pick it up, I can always say to the elves that I did it out of kindness and leave them a note here to say that I've retrieved something. If they care to visit me or see me and can tell me exactly what I found, then they can have it back. I would then be covering myself, wouldn't I? Yes and no. I mean, if you can convince armed elves that you were doing them a favour by taking their property, which you found lying in the snow, merely for safekeeping, then you're either very brave or very stupid, Father. I'm a curious man, Monica. I don't mean to be nosy, but I'm sick of being cut out of everything. I mean, I find a man half dead. I rescue him at considerable risk to me, and to you, of course, dearest daughter. The only thanks I get is a threat to my life. Saul has to dodge bullets to retrieve the elves' infernal satchel contents. These nuisance elves make us jump through endless hoops to get something back for them, which we didn't even take from them in the first place. The only thanks we get is no thanks. Then to cap it all, I'm being bullied on the market by the management and all the other storeholders. I'm just plain exhausted. I'm at the end of my tether about what to do about our failing market stall. Perhaps the answer to all my prayers is just inside that little velvet bag. That little purple velvet bag could be the solution to all the Veltheim family problems. You really are going mad, Father. It isn't even full moon and you're pinning all of your family's future on a little velvet bag. For all you know, it might just have an elf's false teeth in it, a set of yellowing false front teeth still with some saliva attached, all stuck on one of those fancy palette things that a toothless old elf can stick in his mouth in order to look half decent on his one night out away from all the other Klondike lookalikes when he tries to convince a female elf that he's still got some lead left in his pencil. Despite his daughter's protestations, Bruno was adamant. You can write the note now, Monica. Make it 5 notes. We're going to go belt and braces on this one. What I'm going to do is to take this velvet bag and its contents for safekeeping, leave the notes with cryptic clues. So we'll spread them out and hide some more notes just inside the forest here. No travellers in their right mind would enter the deep forest on their own. Only the elves have the run of the place round here. To be quite honest, I think the velvet bag probably does have nothing of any value in it. However, if my dream of a life for the better is just waiting for me once I get rewarded for finding the bag, then why should I leave it lying here? As long as I'm an honest man, that's all that matters to me. I'm merely doing what a decent citizen does when they find lost property. They pick it up and make sure that it's put somewhere safe. That place of safety might be on private property, but as long as they try to leave a note or some form of communication or put word out that they found something that doesn't belong to them, and to ask people to tell others about it, then they're doing their best to find the rightful owner. Surely. Are you speaking to me, Father, or merely posing a rhetorical question to satisfy yourself as to your motives for picking up the velvet bag? If it's a question to yourself, I'm worried, because you are, like most men, acting on impulse and instinct. That isn't a bad thing, but it does mean that you do not always think things through. Monica received only silence from Bruno. It was too late for prevarication now. The velvet bag was pocketed. Bruno was halfway back to the sled by now, with Alfstedt the dog licking his lips in anticipation of another treat he was hoping to receive. I'm sorry, Alfstedt, the bag isn't edible. It isn't a treat for you. I'll get you some more beef jerky and a nice dog biscuit or two. The next 10 minutes were taken up with Monica writing her notes and double-checking them so that they made sense. A typical note to be pinned to a tree somewhere a bit out of sight in the forest, but close to where an elf might have dropped it, read, Did you lose something? If it was yours, then have no fear. It's been found. Just contact the Veltheims on their market stall, leave us a message via the market trader's office, or catch us out and about. We'd love to reunite you with your lost property. As soon as you let us know it was you, we'll meet up to discuss the matter. Do you know, Father, those notes sound a little menacing, actually. They do not sound quite like the friendly, reassuring comfort to the person who's just lost something of value in the woods should. We do not have a choice on that, Monica. We do not have a choice on that, Monica. No point in being nicey-nicey around here. Look where it's got us, being all friendly and soft and helpful. Don't get me wrong, I'm not changing my image for anyone, but this is all about us for once being rewarded. No matter how small the reward is, I would like us to be praised for doing something else, a big or even a small favour. No matter how small the reward is, I would like us to be praised for doing someone else a big or even a small favour. I'm not asking the person who lost this to give me money. I'm merely asking for some recognition for the finding of it. someone to tell me that for once in my life I've actually done some good for a change. So, if I seem to have been just banging my head against a brick wall of negativity, then you'll understand why I took the velvet bag into my safekeeping. Goodness, you really are going through a crisis, Father. You mustn't get upset about how other people are. After all, the elves didn't try and kill you. The market people didn't say you couldn't trade. They're just jealous of you. The railway company is building the extension whether you or the market traders want it or not. The market management is offering you a chance to join the token scheme, which, by the way, is the only option we have in the market if we're to attract new custom. Yes, I agree that the despicable behaviour of ignoring and bullying of you is out of order, but then we do not fit into the category that they want us to. Even if we did, they would have got rid of our store years ago when it was expedient to do so. They're under enormous pressure to dole out favours to their own kith and kin, who also need jobs and an income. We're starting to get in their way, as a never-ending express train of progress rolls all over us, Monica opined. Bruno's mind was not on his daughter's grasp of the big picture. He was simply focused on what he saw in front of his own eyes, which happened to be his latest acquisition. He just wanted to see if his own family could still view him as a hunter-gatherer, which was the image of himself that he wanted them to see. To reinforce his sense of adventure and risk-taking, he proposed what he considered to be a very risky but exciting outcome with the new possession. What about if we do not look inside the velvet bag until we get home? Once at home, we open it in front of everyone at dinner and make a big deal of it. That way, if we're being secretly watched, at least they'll know we've got nothing to hide, said Bruno, as he got the ponies going again for the last few exhausting miles back to the Veltime's residence. Monica realised that she was really up against it in trying to change the mindset of her father. He was still hell-bent on playing the role of a hunter who brought food and exotic finds back to the dinner table. He was still hell-bent on playing the role of a hunter who brought food and exotic finds back to the dinner table. She declined to answer her vexed father. Finally, just as the morning sun's weak winter rays lit up the sheer rock face of Mount Stein across the valley, the Veltimes were back on the farm. Ice adorned every building, having refrozen once thawed. In places there were huge stalactite-looking appendages of ice in long needle shapes. Window frames and tree branches alike had been dressed by the ice storm. Any movement on the carpet of ice was echoed off the farm buildings. In places, ice had frozen on top of snow.